Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we analyse movie trilogies and decide which movie feels thin, like too little book spread over too many films. I'm your host Griner, and joining me today...
I'm Luke, and why does it hurt so much?
And I'm Bard the Boatman, and we'll get this started in a jiffy.
Alright, we are unfortunately doing the Hobbit trilogy. Boys, is this the worst trilogy we have done on this podcast?
No.
Really?
No.
What's worse?
The Matrix trilogy.
No.
2 and 3 of that are way worse than these movies.
Wrong.
The first one's obviously better than these movies, but as a whole, 2 and 3 aren't worse than Revolutions and Reloaded, as far as I'm concerned.
I would genuinely rather watch any of the Matrix films over any of these films again.
Yeah,
I never want
would
to
too.
watch them 2 Matrix films ever again, and I've watched these Hobbit movies over a dozen times in my life. But anyway, I have not a nostalgia thing to it, but I have a weird attachment, like a person that's in a domestic violence relationship or something like that with Peter Jackson in these films. So I don't know. I don't think they're that bad. Is
Is it a Peter Jackson thing for you, or...?
No, it's a Middle Earth thing, and I have this. I don't believe these movies are Peter Jackson's fault. There's a lot of it's a Warner Brothers that are blamed for this trilogy and the mess it turned into. And I've been finding it more interesting to watch documentaries about what happened with The Hobbit than I did watching The Hobbit. And even though I recommended this trilogy, and Lord of the Rings is my main thing in life. I love Lord of the Rings, I love Middle Earth, I love all this stuff. But this is the first trilogy so far that I've recommended that I really didn't want to watch. And I tried to cancel halfway through, and I was like, let's just watch something else, anything else. I was like, I'm not in the mood for this. But I will say, once I started watching them, I was able to watch them.
Not enjoy them, just watch them.
I'd built them up to be worse in my head than what I'd remembered, especially one of them. I really, really haven't watched it since I saw it in the cinema, which is crazy for me. But yeah, they're not great. They're not great at all, but very disappointing. Conan?
These films are hot garbage.
Yeah.
There's one that is okay, and I watched it and I was like, yeah, there's moments about that are fine. If I was forced to watch this as some sort of punishment for the rest of eternity, it's bad, but it's not the worst thing that could happen. But then the other 2 films are just banality personified. They're so... It's like butter and bread. It's like you've got bread with no butter, and the bread's made of cardboard and razor blades, and that's what you have to eat.
And you have to eat it with no teeth.
Yeah.
I feel like these movies are just made that much worse because of their length. And just a side note for the audience, we watched the extended editions of these movies because that's what's available for Australians on streaming. But I just... if they were shorter, I would probably not feel so strongly against them. But the fact that I had to sit through... what's the total runtime on these movies?
Total of 9.5 hours.
No. It's longer than that. It's 11 hours or something.
No, because the third one's only 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Third one comes in under 3, which, thank God.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing there for... There's not even 20 minutes worth of material there.
This is the thing. They were 2 movies. They were 2 movies for a very long time. And legitimately, 2 or 3 months before the first released in cinemas, they turned it into 3 films, which changes the whole pacing, and everything is not great.
You're right. It is kind of interesting to look at what happened behind the scenes to see why these turned out as such a disaster. To think that Peter Jackson, the director of Lord of the Rings, one of the greatest trilogies of all time, created these movies in the same universe is... it's kind of outstanding in its own way, really, isn't it?
But you can feel it in every moment. It's just like this guy being dragged back. I can't even think of an analogy. You can tell he's just broken, beaten, but also paid a huge dump truck's worth of money. And he's just he's whoring himself out. He's like, I'll do this just for these paychecks, but it's he has no enthusiasm for it. You can see it in the CG in the third one. There's no care for what it looks like. He's just he's like, yeah, you guys finish this. I'm going to go and buy another yacht and just, kill some, hunt some animal to extinction because I'm rich now.
Look, okay, let's get into the issues about this trilogy because there's a lot. So obviously it went from 2 movies to 3 movies. Peter Jackson took over production a few months before the first started filming. So he had no pre-production going into this. While Lord of the Rings Fellowship, he had about 2 years of pre-production just to get it ready and plan stuff out and storyboard it.
But he was involved in these. Like, he was one of the writers on these movies before this. He was one of the executive producers. Like, it's not like he came into this entirely blind. I feel like to say none of this is his fault at all is really incorrect.
So what happened? Obviously, Guillermo del Toro was directing these films, and he wanted to do it in a completely different direction than Lord of the Rings. He wanted this to be like a Pan's Labyrinth, very different universe, very fantasy, not grounded in reality type thing, more like The Hobbit probably should be, since it's based on a children's book.
Mm.
Pan's Labyrinth isn't a kid's story, though.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, and there was some conflict between him and Warner Brothers and the way they wanted these films to be, big budget, like Lord of the Rings prequels, basically. So everything he did, and this is according to everybody on set and everyone that worked on it, everything he did was scrapped and just thrown out a few months before they started filming. And everything was redone. Like, Tariel's whole love triangle thing was only done in reshoots. That wasn't part of the whole thing at all. And every shot they did with that is reshoots only. Apparently, Evangeline Lilly did an interview where she said when she got this job, all she asked for was, please don't put me in a love triangle. And they promised her they wouldn't. And then they called her back for reshoots and were like, we've got this idea. And she was like, oh man, it's lost all over again, you know? And, but honestly, Peter Jackson said this, and I encourage anybody who is interested in this to watch some of the behind the scenes features on it. And there's a great documentary on YouTube as well, a 3-part documentary covering these movies and all the stuff that happened behind the scenes on them. He was literally laying the tracks down as he was filming. And there was a part where he had to call off production during filming of Battle of Five Armies and be like, look, I need a few weeks off because I have no idea what we're doing today. They were just filming battle scenes with no storyboards. They didn't know what they wanted to happen. They were just filming a bunch of fight scenes. And Peter Jackson, there's shots of him just sitting on set depressed. You can just see him like just staring off into the distance like, I don't know what we're doing here. Like, okay, you guys come in, fight here, blah, blah, blah. And the production stuff that really messed with it is Warner Brothers at this time was really pushing them to do the whole 3D and 48 frames a second. So these films were shot to be in 48, like shown in 48 frames a second. Obviously, you can't see it like that now. But when they hit cinemas, certain cinemas had them as, I'm not sure what it was called, but they were in 48 frames a second, which 70% of people hated and said it looked really weird and everything like that. And a lot of people, some people liked it and thought this is revolutionary and everything. But that was their direction for him to film it like this, which caused a bunch of other issues. Like they scrapped all of their, the way they did backdrops and miniatures and everything like that. They used to use artwork and everything. And when they did it in 48 frames a second, it looked really noticeable and looked really bad, which is why they had to do a bunch of last-minute CGI over everything. It had to be more CGI to blend more well with the 48 frames a second. Azog, they filmed all 3 movies with a physical actor there in a costume. The one you see in the third one with like the red hair that's Galadriel obliterates. He was Azog for all 3 movies and filmed all them fight scenes. And then they redid him as a CGI character about 3 months before the first film came out in the cinemas. It's ridiculous. And that's why they look bad. These movies have worse CGI than Lord of the Rings did 20 years ago. It's mind-blowing.
And that's because like Lord of the Rings CGI it's that thing where it's like it's used sparingly to improve on what they've already got. Like they've got massive, vast... they've got practical effects. It's only when there's like, a bird's eye view far off of an army that they do it. So it's like you can't notice that regardless. Yeah. Or then it slightly embellishes things. Same with like obviously Mad Max Fury Road, which I refer to every episode because it's the best film ever.
Yeah, we literally talked about this last week.
Yeah. We're going to watch that trilogy of just that film 3 times.
I'm so excited for that. They slightly improve on like the storm effects, and so it's all this stuff that still feels real and looks real. They just improve. Whereas in this, they're creating great characters. By the way, Azog, 10 out of 10 character, a lot of depth, a lot of story. They're just like they just bring it in. They're like, yeah, let's do that. And it's like this looks like a big pile of dog turd.
Yeah,
I'll just say one of my friends, Macca, that's his favorite character, Azog, in all of literature. So Griner?
He's not part of Butch.
Does he read books?
I was just going to say, like, CGI always seems to be best when it's used to fill in the last 10%. Like, you get 90% of the way there with the physical effects and good acting and that sort of thing, and then you finish it off with the CGI. And these, like you said, like their choice to shoot in 3D and 48 frames per second, like they couldn't even do the forced perspective to make the characters look small.
No.
So everything has to be like CGI for that. And it just, like, you hear those stories about Ian McKellen breaking down on the set because he's just acting in front of a green screen for 5 hours a day. Like, these movies should be just disregarded and thrown away because that's just terrible.
It's true. It's like a misstep for everything. None of the choices they made were good. Like, it makes me angry. Well. It makes me angry.
I was under the impression that the 48 frames per second was Peter Jackson's baby.
Oh, there's conflict stuff. Peter Jackson, in a lot of interviews, seems to really be trying to defend Warner Brothers a lot in this. So there's a lot of other stuff that I wasn't even aware of about this stuff. Like, I'm talking politics in New Zealand. There's a law in New Zealand that was introduced because of this movie called the Hobbit Law. That's actually a law in New Zealand because Warner Brothers were going to take the filming of The Hobbit to Europe because New Zealanders had protested and gone on sort of a strike demanding equal rights because a lot of film companies film in New Zealand and Australia because it's cheaper because our actors' rights or whatever, like setting crew and everything like that, aren't as good as the rest of the world apparently, which is why they come here. New Zealanders wanted equal rights and Warner Brothers was just like, well, we'll go film in Hungary or Europe or something like that. And so there was this massive strike with protesters and everything like that. And the New Zealand Prime Minister at the time brought in a new law called the Hobbit Law, which made basically actors independent contractors. And so they couldn't form up and do all this stuff. And people are still trying to repeal that law today because it's screwed over actors in New Zealand when it comes to these big budget productions and everything like that. It's crazy. There's a lot of stuff that went into this. And Peter Jackson tries to defend it a lot, like in interviews, and you can tell like he's got this corporate thing, puppet. He's like the puppet for Warner Brothers being like, no, the reason they're doing it is because of this. And it's so transparent. And poor Peter Jackson lost so much weight before this film and then put on 100 kilos while filming it. Like, no, I feel bad for him because obviously, like, I don't know. This isn't representative and it almost tarnishes the legacy of Lord of the Rings, which is the best trilogy of all time in my opinion. And this really is like, it's a bad aftertaste to have in your mouth of The Hobbit.
It really is. To me, it tarnishes Lord of the Rings a lot. Do you guys, I know you do, Luke, but do you guys, other than Lord of the Rings, is Peter Jackson a good director?
I'll answer. I guess I can answer this before Luke goes on a diehard fanboy tangent. I think he is. I think he's definitely, like any director, he's made some huge missteps, but I think his strengths do show. Like, obviously, Lord of the Rings in itself is like, proves that he can be a phenomenal director. But The Frighteners, starring MVP Michael J. Fox, really, really good film. I haven't seen Bad Taste, but I hear that's, for a sort of a first-time filmmaker's like stupid film, it's meant to be pretty good.
That's the other film of his I actually quite enjoy. Like it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and then there's Lovely Bones, which I need to reevaluate because when I saw that, I was actually really disappointed. But from what I've read, some of the retrospective is kind of positive on that. But I think, with this and with The Frighteners, you can see that he's got talent without a doubt. I don't think he's like just a corporate hack who fell into it. Like Lord of the Rings could have gone wrong in so many ways, but it was a lot of responsibility, a lot of money, a lot of all this stuff on him, and he made it work. And I think this does show that even though I don't think Peter Jackson's entirely a victim or like he didn't just get dragged to this and he's like, oh no, I have to make these films, please no. He was like,
they've got my wife and kids. Exactly.
He made a lot of money. So he made 180 million off the first Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm sure he made quadruple that for this. But you can tell that he's coming at it and he's trying to just be like, all right, I'll do what worked already for content that's not there. And that's not a wise choice. But I don't think that's necessarily his indicative of his quality as a director.
Okay, so look, I used to be worse with this. I used to be of the fanboy opinion. I used to say Peter Jackson was my favorite director and he's the best director in the world, simply because the Lord of the Rings trilogy are my favorite movies of all time, like without question. I love those films. I adore them. I can watch them every 2 months. I definitely don't have that opinion as an adult now. Christopher Nolan's my favorite director now. Love him or hate him, but he's my favorite director. He makes the most quality movies that I enjoy, all of them. Peter Jackson, I think he's hit and miss. You can't deny what he did with Lord of the Rings. I think it's the perfect adaptation of those books and did something that changed cinema, I believe. Like, I know like Oscars can be discredited and everything, but the amount that took over Hollywood, and it was a clean sweep. It won like 18 Oscars, Return of the King, like something ridiculous that won't be beaten for a very long time, and changed the way cinema did fantasy and looked at fantasy and looked at these trilogies and everything like that. The Frighteners, I have a weird thing. Like, that movie really scared me as a child, just seeing the numbers carved into people's foreheads. Though I've never watched it since I was a little kid and I saw it on TV, because it literally haunted my nightmares for years. And so I've never watched it. I don't think I'd be into his earlier stuff that he did. King Kong, I thought I liked at the time. I don't know if I ever want to watch that movie again.
Yeah,
Tintin was fine. Tintin was fine. I like Tintin.
He didn't direct that.
Oh, didn't he? He was involved in it, though.
He was producer. He was like a producer. Spielberg directed Tintin.
Oh, okay, true.
But he's scheduled to direct the Tintin sequel if that ever happens.
And he did Mortal Engines last year, which I haven't watched. So
nobody did.
No, exactly. Or it was the year before, actually. Sorry, but yeah, I think he's a good director. When I watch Lord of the Rings in a critical way, there's a few weird shots where I'm like, well, that's weird. Like the slow down effect with Frodo, like making noises when he gets stabbed, and like weird framing shots with Galadriel where she's like turned possessed, like where it's weird stuff that I don't think is great. But those movies are close to perfect in my opinion. But I think that was also a lot of hard work from the crew. Like, it was a perfect combination of the amount of people, talented people working on that with a perfect cast. So, but yeah, that's my opinion of Peter Jackson.
Fair enough.
Brian,
All right,
what do you think of him?
I mean, I don't think he's that great. Like, Lord of the Rings is good. I think he did a good job on it. I really don't like any of his other movies. I think Bad Taste is okay, but I haven't seen The Frighteners. Like this, there's plenty of his movies I haven't seen, but like King Kong was shit.
Yeah, King Kong sucks. Heavenly Creatures is the one of his that's considered like a really, really good film, and sort of the one that showed he was a great director, but I haven't seen that either.
All right, let's get down to some stats before we really get into it.
Stats.
All right, so first Hobbit movie, budget of $200 million, made over $1 billion, like $1.017 billion. $250 million for the second film. It made $959 million. $250 million budget for the third film, $956 million. These movies are all in the top 50 highest grossing films of all time. Obviously did extremely well at the box office. Not so well in critical reviews. So Metacritic rates the first movie at 58, second movie at 66, and the third movie at 59, which are all pretty poor scores.
Yeah. Did you say the first one was 58?
Yeah.
And the third one was 59?
Yeah.
That's wrong.
No,
I disagree with that.
I agree with that.
No. Wait a minute.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, wait a minute. Anyway, the question, does this deserve to be a trilogy? No, it doesn't. First of all, like, no.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that section. But you're right, it doesn't deserve to be a trilogy.
It definitely does not.
No, and that's the biggest crime of this trilogy, is that they made what should have been 1 3-hour film into 3 3-hour films.
2 2-hour films. Perfect, I think.
I don't even think there's that there.
Okay, so let's get into the main problem with this. I know I'm going to talk a lot on this. I'm sorry for anyone that doesn't like me. I just have a lot to talk about these movies. This is about 10 years of like pent up stuff that I haven't really talked about before. So this is my counseling session on The Hobbit. The problem with these films is that The Hobbit, no, there's many. There's about 267. The problem with these is that the book wasn't written to be a prequel to Lord of the Rings. It was written as its own children's sort of book that were done in sort of absolute chapters that, you know, they now have the trolls and now they finish that. So you could read it to your kids one chapter at a time, like each night sort of thing. It wasn't written as a prequel. Lord of the Rings was written later, obviously, but they do these films as if it's a prequel to Lord of the Rings, similar to like the Star Wars prequels are legitimate prequels to the original trilogy. But the main theme of Lord of the Rings is not the main theme of The Hobbit, and they try to do that. Like the ring isn't involved in The Hobbit at all. Obviously, he finds it, but it's this magic ring, blah blah blah, that they find out
It's
later is this thing.
the happy turn invisible ring, not the
Exactly.
evil incarnate
And
talisman.
this whole necromancer is Sauron returned. Everything like Legolas shouldn't be there.
No. That's
Like-
the biggest crime. To be fair, Tolkien himself went back and retconned The Hobbit. Like there is
Yeah.
things added in. There is the necromancer. Like that is part of what of Tolkien's writing.
Yeah, no,
But-
and I get that, but the whole Sauron thing feels like so, like I don't know, because it feels like when you watch Fellowship, it's not like it's like, man, I've been dealing with this Sauron thing for the last 60 years. It's like there's this big threat, he's back. Let's not talk about it for 60 years, and then 60 years later, be like, oh my god, Sauron is back again after Galadriel sent him, for a 6 again. Like.
And that happens over and over again. Like even the ring, he's like, "Oh, just Bilbo, where's that ring that you had?" Like he's aware of it, but it's not like front of mind. Whereas in this, he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be wearing that ring too much," and stuff like this. Like he knows more than he should at that point in time.
Yeah, it makes me raises questions about Gandalf and if he's any is he even good as a wizard? Should he have his wizarding rights stripped of him because he's kind of useless in this?
As Saruman says, his love of the halfling's leaf has slowly slowed his mind.
Just getting stoned in the back of Rivendell the whole time.
Why did Christopher Lee agree to do these movies? Like, I feel like this should be an affront to his...
Because he loves all things Tolkien.
I feel so bad for Christopher Lee. And when you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff, he can't walk, obviously, at this point when they're filming these films. And he's sitting there. He's so passionate. He met Tolkien. Christopher Tolkien, what a freaking legend in life, and there's this interview he did, and I watched it last night, and it breaks my heart. Like he says, if the audience cares and remembers this performance, I know Sauron's not meant to be part of this, and he says that line leave Sauron to me, and he loved saying that line, and he's like, audiences will remember this, and I think Peter Jackson will do a really good job with these films, and I hope my legacy, because he was really bummed that Saruman's death is not in the theatrical of Return of the King. And he was like, this will be my lasting memory of these movies. And I feel so bad for him because these movies are not good. And not that Saruman's bad in it. I like seeing Saruman. I loved seeing him when I watched these movies originally. But for I don't know, it's so obviously CGI, so many of these things. Ian Holm couldn't walk at this time. So every time he's walking around and stretching out the front of his house, it's this weird CGI face thing that's going on. There's a lot of problems with these films where they keep tapping into. Frodo didn't need to be in this movie. It's a 20-minute prologue at the start of The Hobbit. It does not need a longer prologue than Lord of the Rings did to set up that whole universe. But it's got a longer prologue just describing Erebor. But anyway, I won't go further into it. But I will in a second. But Conan.
Right.
Well, I think you're right. The issue with this. All the issues get summed up in that this content gets given the Lord of the Rings treatment, and it's not Lord of the Rings. That's the problem. Peter Jackson was like, well, what do I do? Or I don't know if he was panicking or if this was his plan all along. He's like, yeah, this is my baby. Del Toro, piss off. I'm back in the director's chair. And he's just like, I'll make Lord of the Rings again. And that really messes it up because it's like you said, look, it's not Lord of the Rings. It's low stakes stuff. It's meant to be a jolly romp. It's meant to be a kid's story. It's not meant to have all these characters. It's not meant to build into that world. Or it's meant to build the world outside. It's not meant to build into that story. But instead he's like, no, like I said, this is Lord of the Rings prequel. It's going to be the same epic thing. There's going to be long sweeping shots of vistas and New Zealand scenery. And there's going to be elves doing elf stuff. We're going to get Legolas in because people love Legolas. It's like, none of that's it. And we'll get into this way more in the how to fix this. But yeah, these films are a misstep from every moment.
I don't want to step too much on how to fix things, but the only scene for me that works where he's foreshadowing Lord of the Rings is the scene where Bilbo drops the ring in Mirkwood, and he's desperately trying to get it back, and there's a creature, there's a little spider creature there getting near it, and he's tapping into that my precious side of the ring. That's as much as I think they needed to do in these movies. And Lord of the Rings.
He kills the animal violently, and then he's like, "Holy crap! What did I just do?"
Yeah. Actually, to your point as well before, I kind of like the necromancer stuff in the second film. I actually like the fact that it gives it more of a like sort of almost like a bit of a horror vibe, where it's like there's this weird thing happening, no one's quite sure what it is, and it is kind of creepy. It's like there's this evil force there, and even though you sort of already know it's Sauron, part of you's like, I don't know, maybe it's something else. What exactly is this weird magic? And then it really ruins it where they explore it all in the third one. They're like, oh, it's Sauron. It's here he is as an eye. I think if they kept that as this nice mystery in the background, it would have been really cool. But they try to go too deep to be like, hey guys, this is from Lord of the Rings, remember?
Like, I swear they do that eye shot like 10 times saying it's Sauron in the eye. Grana?
The problem with the Hobbit books is that Gandalf just disappears for lengths of period, like lengths at a time, just so that the hobbits and the dwarves have something to do, like so that they can save themselves rather than Gandalf saving them over and over again. And there's no explanation given to it in the book. And then later on, Tolkien went and wrote this whole necromancer arc, which is what we get here. And I mean, you have to explain it somehow, because if Gandalf just pisses off for half a movie, it is kind of weird.
Which in the cartoon, he's like, I have an appointment. I got to go for a bit. I'll see you later. Hope you don't die. And I'll see you down the line.
And all you needed is a scene of him smoking some gillyweed. back in Rivendell, just like passing out. And everything flies. Like, he was chillaxing.
All right, let's get into it. Which film's the worst? Do you want to go first, Luke?
So, okay, I thought this wouldn't be an argument. I thought this was so universally agreed upon that I didn't think I would have to defend this choice, that The Battle of Five Armies is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And I think it's the thing that really spits on me as a viewer and just Lord of the Rings as a whole. It's a 3-hour just battle. It's a 3-hour battle. That's all it is. The battle in the book is 2 pages long. Bilbo's not even part of the battle, so they just knock him out in this for it. Oh, this is like where the big problem with Legolas comes into it. Like, Legolas is a big problem in these films where I like Orlando Bloom and I like him as Legolas. And when I watched Lord of the Rings, like, he plays that part well. He seems otherworldly, he seems like elfish and everything like that. In this one, I feel like this is Orlando Bloom 20 years later or 10 years later, who's like, Legolas is cool. People think Legolas is cool. I'm cool. And he plays Legolas as if, I'm the cool archer dude. I'm smoldering now, and now I'm doing all the flippy dippy crap, like jumping on rocks that are falling in the air. It's the worst thing. And the fact that the extended edition of Battle of Five Armies, the only scenes they add are other battle scenes, like the stuff of before getting his axe stuck in an orc's head and then them pulling him off. Like pulling his head off off the orc, and like the weird scenes where, what's his name? The Master's servant dude is the worst character in movie history, as far as I'm concerned.
Wormtongue 0.5.
Exactly. And they use him so much, and you hate him so much because they keep going to it over and over again without him getting his comeuppance. And my biggest problem is that in the theatrical, you don't get a payoff to all those scenes. You get all those scenes of him being slimy and everything. You don't see him die in the theatrical. The last time you see him is him adjusting his bosom with all the coins in it, Bard saying that comment, and him walking away. He gets away. That's how the theatrical one, and that's pissed me off all these years. I'd never seen the extended one until like 2 days ago when I watched this. And it's just more battle scenes. It's just more this. And it's all CGI battle scenes. You have Billy Connolly there as Dane Ironfoot, and he's a complete CGI character. He's not there. He's not there at all. It's just fully CGI, swinging around, headbutting, swinging his axe around. It looks bad. It's a 3-hour CGI fest. There's the weird thing with Thorin and the gold, which looks bad as well, like him succumbing to this and falling in the golden pool and everything like that.
Thorin sucks.
Dead before the title screen pops up in the third movie. The third movie is completely pointless as far as I'm concerned. And I really think it's the worst. It doesn't have a scene that saves it like the first one has the Gollum scene. And I love Riddles in the Dark.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think I agree. I think I agree with you, Luke. Like, Battle of the Five Armies is the worst. It is just an extended battle scene, and you could argue like, Return of the King is a bit like that too. But Return of the King has this great tension where there's actual stakes. You actually care about all the characters, and you also have the juxtaposition of Frodo and Sam and what they're doing in Mordor. Like, to break it up, to like pace it out better. But this movie, I felt like it was coming to an end like 5 times, and it just drags on and on and on. I'm 100% right about Legolas. Like he is one of the worst additions to these movies. Like I think he should have been in the second movie as like a background character in the Elven Halls of Mirkwood, because he would have existed there. Like but it like even undoes his character in Lord of the Rings, because like he's this kind of he feels like an innocent, like a young elf who's brash and hates dwarves. And in this, he's like had this extended relationship with all these dwarves, and like his girlfriend left him for a dwarf. Like it's just so weird.
This seems like, based off Legolas's performance and his character, this seems like it takes place after Lord of the Rings. He seems more battle hardened. He seems more like like 60 years older instead of 60 years younger in this. Keep him in number 2. Have the cool shout out with Gloin, where he's like this little demon spawn. He's like, that's my wee lad Gimli. That's fun. I laughed at the cinema with that. Obviously, it's just this corny thing, but keep that. Don't go overboard with the barrel scene of him jumping on everyone's heads and doing all this.
The barrel scene.
All this stuff. But have him in Mirkwood, and maybe join the final battle. But he's in that more than most other characters. And the fact that his third fiddle in this love triangle really diminishes his character. Like, he's not even cool enough to get Tariel, the dwarf that she's met once, tops Legolas, who she's been working with and fighting with all these years. And Legolas just seems desperate. Like, he's like, no, my dad doesn't command my heart. And she's like, I don't even like you. I'm digging this dwarf. And he completely abandons everything. Then there's the weird plot with his mum, where he's just like, all of a sudden, halfway through the third movie, he's like, my mum died there. There's no grave, blah, blah, blah. And then in the extended edition, they have the scene with Thranduil at the end where he's like, your mother loved you, by the way. As if that's like this major revelation. Like, don't most mums do that? Like,
yeah.
And I'll just say this one thing before I let Conan talk. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. But the most egregious thing in this, and when I realized it when rewatching it the other day, is that they have Thorin's death, which, thanks to Martin Freeman, who's great as Bilbo, and we'll get into that, thanks to Martin Freeman's performance, is heartbreaking. I like that scene. Like, Martin Freeman sitting next to him, crying, sort of childlike, next to Thorin, and being like, look, the eagles are here, the eagles are here. That's heartbreaking. Then the next scene after that, for the emotional climax of the movie, is Tariel reacting to Killy's death. That's after Thorin's death, is the love triangle storyline finishing. That's bullshit. And it's just like, I don't care about them. They shouldn't be there. And you have Thranduil just walking and being like, because it was real. Like, as if he's overcome all of his thing and been like, look at this true love that these guys shared, when they've met each other for a total of about 10 minutes so far. It's like, yeah. Anyway, Conan, why is the third one not the worst?
I really don't want to have to try to defend the third one, because those scores we read out, 57 and 59, that is 2% difference. Like, it's minute.
Do you think it's 2% better?
I really don't care. They're both garbage.
Yeah, they
are. I honestly don't think there's enough material here to critically analyze and be like, one is better than the other. But just for the sake of argument, I absolutely loathe the songs in the first film.
Yeah.
The songs that the dwarfs do are the stupidest, most cringeworthy, insulting things. That scene where they all walk in and they're like, bumble, 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 we throw plates when we wash up and eat food. It's like, what the hell am I watching? Have I just stepped back into like some sort of weird subverted Disney film or something?
We just did High School Musical.
They never have any false pretense about what they are. This is a film that's like...
The Hobbit book is filled with songs.
This isn't the Hobbit book, though. This is the Hobbit films. And so it's trying to be Lord of the Rings, and then it's just song after song after song in the first film. And it's like, this was like a first draft idea where they filmed that the first thing, and they're like, well, we got to keep it in because we filmed it. So they should have never been there. If they were going to be there, devote and make it lighthearted. But it's so shit.
To be fair, there's songs all through Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like, they both are full of songs. And Lord of the Rings has some songs. There's the song that Aragorn sings a song, right? At the end of Return of the King.
Aragorn sings a song. Pippin sings a song.
But it's very different.
They're used really, really well, though, is what I'm trying to say. They're characters you care about. they're singing for a reason. Like, it makes sense for them to be singing. Whereas this, yeah, you're right. It feels like we've stepped into Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. They're these bumbling, stupid dwarves that sing songs all day, and they're here to kiss Bilbo on the head to wake him up or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, and they're throwing his food around in this weird, like, they defy physics. They're some sort of, like, they're sorcerers. They don't adhere to the normal rules of men. And then that never comes back, really. They never do the songs again. They never really have the same bizarre extent of, like, you know, flipping plates over heads that perfectly land and stuff. They could have saved them a lot of trouble in the battles if they were just throwing friggin' rocks into foreheads or ninja stars or something. But it's this weird thing where they're like, I think they afterwards are like, yeah, those songs were shit. We should have never done that. Let's just pretend the dwarves don't sing in the next two films, which is so dumb.
Look, they forgot about the dwarves in the next two films. Like, the first film is very different than 2 and 3. 2 and 3, Legolas, Tariel come in and they focus on those characters, and the other characters don't do anything anymore. Like, all the dwarves that aren't young and attractive, like Killy and Thorin, don't get any screen time except for Balin.
Looking dwarves.
Except Balin, who's like the MVP of the dwarves. I'll just say Balin.
He's the old one, right?
He's Santa, yeah.
He's just the exposition dwarf.
I like Balin.
His only role in those films is to literally be like, this is why this happened. This is why Thorin does things.
Like, when you see him react to, like, Thorin losing his mind and he's sitting in a room, like, upset, you can feel that. Screw you. I like Balin. Ken Stott's a great actor.
Playing a stoic old man is not very hard to do.
Look, here's the thing. When I watched this movie, I really was in this mindset of being like, I'll love this no matter what. And as I was watching it and all the songs kept happening, I'm being like, this is just like the books. I love this movie. But I didn't like the songs. I like the one where they're around the fireplace and they're singing the Misty Mountains. That's a cool song. I like that. The Chip the Plate song isn't good, but that's the thing. It's this whole duality of the themes that they're going for, where the first one feels more like the Hobbit book than the next two do. That's where it gets into, let's make Lord of the Rings prequels sort of thing, where it's much more, it's not about the dwarves at all. It's not about this, like, camaraderie between the dwarves. Like, those other 10 dwarves get more lines in the first film than they do in the next two films combined. Like, can anyone name all the dwarves?
No, they're not characters.
In the book, they're not really characters either, though. Like,
no, I know, but you're doing a movie, 2 movies on them. You need to expand on it a bit.
To me, the big sin in the first movie is that they lean really heavily on Azog, who's just he's a shit character. He really spoils. He really spoils, like, the whole
Mac
arc.
is outraged.
Like, the Goblin King, the whole Goblin King thing is, like, pointless. They've been running from orcs. Who cares about these little goblins? Like, you have this reveal of Sting, which is really cool, and this is a sword that carries its way through the whole trilogy, and you find out why it's named Sting, except for before that he kills an orc and a warg with it. Like, it's not like the first thing he killed with it, he named it after like he's supposed to. He just like, oh yeah, I've used it a bunch. Oh, and now I killed a spider, I'm going to call it Sting. Like, it just really it really undoes these pivotal things for Lord of the Rings to have them chased by this orc throughout the whole first movie, and Radagast running around with his rabbits.
That quote,
Radagast.
That's the quote that I should have used, where Gandalf's like, these are something or other borgs. You can't outrun them. And he's like, these are stupid rabbits. Just watch. My skin shivered when
see them try.
My skin shivered when I hear that line. Like, that is the worst piece of dialogue I've ever heard in a film. Like, I will take that to the bank. It's awful. It's atrocious.
I'm pretty sure they used that line of dialogue in the trailer to promote them. I don't like Radagast at all. Like, the whole going cross-eyed thing and being all cartoonish and annoys me so much. Like, I don't know if it's just because he's got the poop on his head as well.
Yeah, he's a real shit wizard. He's mentioned. He's mentioned for like 3 lines in all of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and that's how much he should exist.
That's the thing, because the idea of the wizards is you have these 2 really cool characters. You have Gandalf, who's just the ultimate grandfather, uncle, whatever. You have Saruman, who's just like the ultimate evil stepfather. And then you've got Radagast, who's just like, I don't know, he's like the brother that no one really wants.
He's the autistic uncle. Like, I don't know. It's really bad.
Uncle Leo.
Exactly. Oh.
And then you have the 2 blue wizards.
He was like, so I want to know what they're like. Maybe they're cool. But yeah, he was like the uncle or the brother who was hit in the head and it was never quite the same. And no one, it just undermines what the wizards stand for. It's so dumb. But that's the real problem with the first one, is it has such a weird pacing of like, They're just walking along. Here's a slight inconvenience. It gets resolved. Here's another little event. It gets resolved. Like they go and they get chased and they just go safe and they go here and then it's fine and they go there and then it's fine and then they go to Goblin Town and it's fine.
To be fair, that's more like what the Hobbit book is, though. Like, here's a little vignette about them escaping the halls of the Goblin King, which works as a book, doesn't work so well as a movie.
Is this where
I'm not saying that's a defense of it. I'm just saying.
No, but I think that leads into how this gets improved. So put a pin on that until we talk about it.
So, okay, if we're talking about the first one, do you guys like the troll scene with the 3 trolls?
Awful, atrocious, genuinely abysmal.
I find that kind of funny. I find them funny. I'm not saying it's comedy gold or witty, but it's fun in a way.
Is it really?
I don't know.
Nah, I remember that scene being like, it's an interesting scene in the book because it comes back up again in Lord of the Rings. Like, obviously they run into these trolls as they're leaving the Shire. But yeah, it's not fun. It's dumb.
I don't know. I like the whole, they've got parasites. I don't know. I don't know. There's fun stuff in it. I think it doesn't do comedy well, these movies, but I think that's one of the highlights of what
they keep trying. That's the problem. Like one of my first notes is like the tone of these movies is all over the place. Like you've got these, I don't know, you've got this like ultimate quest that's really important for this dude's lineage, and you're trying to frame this in with Lord of the Rings, which is a really serious like set of events. And then you've got these bumbling dwarves and these trolls with runny noses. Like it's just the tone is all over the place.
Yep.
And those Goblin King.
And those trolls are so.
The Goblin King dancing. Oh my goodness!
that's an extended
drum kit. Ugh.
That's an extended scene. That just starts with him sitting there being like, "Who would be so bold to enter my thing?" And then when I watched the extended, I was like, "Oh, great, he sings too." This is awesome.
No, but when the trolls are there, the thing that's so stupid about that troll scene is they're cooking them, and the trolls say, "Quick, we've got to finish cooking them before dawn." And within about 3 minutes, the sun rises, and this is real time. It's not like it cuts 2 hours later. So they're just cooking these dwarves and like, quick, we got 3 minutes to cook these until we get turned to stone. And then Gandalf turns up and it's so dumb.
Rock, though.
No, the rock is guarding them from the sun. That is literally what happens in the book. Like,
but it's so silly.
It's
not saying it's great. They're stupid though. They're stupid trolls.
But that's not even funny. That's just like laughing at someone who's. That's not funny.
It's not my favorite scene. It's not great.
Did you laugh at anything in Battle of the Five Armies other than like unironically, like Legolas?
No, but they're not trying to make you laugh. This film is the first one is trying to make you laugh so much, and you're just like, I feel bad for you guys. I feel bad, Peter Jackson.
Why is the Master's Apprentice in there if not for any comedy relief? With him dressing up as a woman, with the
gold
like
falling out of his boobs.
Oh, what's his face?
When he dies in the dude's in the mouth of the troll. Anyway, it's real dumb.
That's good to see, but it should have been theatrical as well, because otherwise there's no payoff to the 20 minutes we spend with that sniveling bloody coward.
I mean, him and the Master, their whole story is just so pointless. It's like, again, it takes Wormtongue's story, which works really well as like a 20-minute thing, and it's like, let's make this a whole arc in on itself, and it's so pointless, and his performance is so bad.
Poor
Stephen Fry is really
he's bad. He's really bad.
There's just so much wasted stuff in these films. But the first one has Riddles in the Dark, which I think is one of the strongest scenes of the whole trilogy.
Yeah, that's
cool. Classic.
I agree.
And Gollum looks fantastic. Like they obviously put a lot more work into him than they did for any other CGI creature other than Smaug, obviously. But he looks so good, and I really enjoy that scene, and it's intense. And I remember being at the cinema watching that, and the second he falls down at that hole and the reveal of Gollum, it's like such a cool 10-minute scene of that movie. Obviously, there's the other 3 hours to deal with, but
to me, that's the thing that saves it from being worse than Battle of the Five Armies.
Yeah. I really don't care which you pick.
It's literally which is the worst turd amongst all these turds. Like it's just
exactly. And that scene is better than any scene in Battle of the Five Armies, without a doubt. But then at the same time, Five Armies has Martin Freeman giving like an emotional performance. And he's playing Martin Freeman in that film, which is fine because he plays Martin Freeman really well. But like he does bring
Bilbo.
He does, yeah, basically. That's it. He's been Bilbo in everything he's played. But he brings some strong, even in that scene where he's saying goodbye to the dwarfs. I don't care about him at all, but it's like he brings a certain element of like, oh, this is a goodbye, and he has formed a relationship.
Yeah. And when he's
And
like, dinner's at 4 or whatever, like
tea's at
it's
4.
like,
You don't have to knock. It's like,
it's sweet. It is.
that was a slight breeze against my heartstring.
So
I felt
it's
something.
nice payoff on the character changing too. Like,
yeah,
but
I'll say,
I don't know.
Like the positives in Battle of Hobbit. I really like Thranduil. Lee Pace is great as him. I think he's a standout.
I've come to like Lee Pace a lot. I don't know if any of you guys have seen *Halt and Catch Fire*. It's not a bad TV show that he's in. He's really, really good in that. And then I realized he was Thranduil, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, he's so I reckon he's really underrated in my opinion.
Who the hell is Thranduil?
Lee Pace. That's
the
Legolas's dad. Legolas's dad.
Ah,
I think he's cool, and I think he feels like an elf should. Like he's a standout character, I think, in this. And I like Bard. I really, really like Bard.
I agree.
I like Luke Evans. He's cool.
Yeah, Bard is the best. Because Bard's not much of a character in the books. He's the best example of how they did flesh out a character from the books.
So in the books, he's literally basically an unnamed person that kills Smaug. He's just this dude that shoots Smaug, unnamed hero, basically that kills. And he's like, yeah, I'm the one that killed Smaug. But
like, I don't care about his family history and his dad not being able to do it or whatever. But like him and his family, I'm okay with. Like, I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah,
and the whole dynamic with him and the Master and like them locking him up and stuff. It's tense and I like Bard. Luke Evans is great. He's cool.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, who's to blame for this nightmare of a trilogy?
Hot take. We're to blame for loving Lord of the Rings so much. That we created a culture and we've set ourselves up to fail. We shouldn't have been big fans, and then they would have made a different film.
I think anyone and everyone that's involved in this is to blame.
We should have learned from the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, they should have.
That they would make a prequel that's really bad one day if we like this series too much. There's a lot of people to blame with this. Yeah. Like greedy studio execs. Warner Brothers pushing this for the release date. I think it only had like a 3-month delay in cinemas when Peter Jackson was really pushing. Like, I don't have time to finish these films. And that's why the CGI, what we see on Stan, looks better than it did in the cinemas. And they go over that in the documentary. What was shown in cinemas, like Azog looked way worse at the original cinema. He looks a little more detailed, even though he still doesn't look great. There's a lot of stuff that went wrong. I don't like the people that worked, like the crew and everything, can't be blamed. Like Weta Workshop are amazing. They seemed really under the pump. They were stressed out about the time frame with like a month or two to CGI certain characters in for the whole film. I can't blame the actors too much. Like
I think even if the CGI was perfect and flawless, they're still bad movies. Like
they are.
Sure, it detracts from it, but it doesn't save it either.
No, exactly. But I don't think you can blame any of the actors, really.
All the dwarves are hamming it up real bad.
But, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the direction they're given.
I can imagine Peter Jackson just being like... Yeah, I can imagine just being like, you guys do what you want. Just, I don't know. You dwarves, do it. I'm just going to go out the back and burn some money because I have so much. But I think some of the blame does have to fall on Peter Jackson. I get what you're saying, Luke, and I do think he, in a lot of ways, was put in a weird position where he's like, I've got no time to prep. I have to make this. What do I do? I'll just make Lord of the Rings again. But like, he could have turned this down. He could have just been like, no, I'm not doing that, guys. He could have done... He probably would have had enough power to be like, we need to push this back a year as well.
I feel like surely if anyone in Hollywood had that kind of power over a Hobbit movie, it's him, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like with Game of Thrones. The Double Ds were just like, no, we want to finish this, and they ruined the last season when they could have pushed it back for as long as they needed. I reckon this is the same thing. I think he was just probably wanted it done, or he was just burned out because he could have done so many better choices, but he was just like, nah, because he made a lot of money.
There's a whole rumor and like story that basically they said like if he wasn't going to do it, because he was adamant about not directing it before Guillermo del Toro took over. He didn't want to do it. He told them, I've already done a trilogy in Middle Earth. I don't want to do another one. I don't think I can. I'll be executive producer. And he says he begrudgingly accepted the role of taking over it, and that they were going to do it with someone else and do it somewhere else. They weren't going to film in New Zealand if it wasn't Peter Jackson. And he's like, there was this whole uproar about it in New Zealand that they think that is I mean, it is. That is New Zealand. Like, Lord of the Rings is synonymous with New Zealand. And Peter Jackson has that loyalty to New Zealand. And yeah, I don't know. I watched an interview with the actor that plays Oin, the one that has the earpiece that he keeps shoving up to his ear, the deaf guy. And he said that at the start of this, like, it was meant to be about the 12 dwarves. And it was all about them. And then as they got on, and he said pressure from studio execs got to Peter Jackson about it should be about Legolas, Tariel, Thorin, Killy, and Philly. Oh, not even Philly. He's just Killy's brother, so it's not even him. But they changed the designs of Killy, like it made him shaven, like more slimmed down. Like Peter Jackson came into this and he was like, I want all the dwarves to look very dwarvish. All of them to have like runes tattooed on their faces, like there's concept art of all of them looking outrageous, like as you would picture a dwarf in World of Warcraft or anything like that would look like, you know? And studio execs made like, no, let's have short Aragorn and other Aragorn. Like, I don't know. I think Warner Brothers really screwed this film series over.
Why do all the dwarves have stupid haircuts? Like, why do none of them just have normal hair? Or, like, they put a lot of time and effort into it, and it doesn't look good. It clearly looks dumb.
Oh,
is there some sort of like
thing.
Is there some sort of hierarchy?
The fake beards look really bad in these films.
Oh, it looks like crack.
A lot of characters in Lord of the Rings had wigs, obviously, and fake beards and stuff like that. It didn't look bad. In this one, like Dwalin with the big mustache and the big mutton chops, they all look fake. Like it all looks like it's glued on to their faces, and it looks comedic. It
probably was.
Yeah, it probably was glued on their face. But like even Thorin, when you look at Thorin's beard in the first one, it's this weird like wig beard that's on his face,
slightly crooked.
2 and 3 is his normal beard because apparently he argued for that. He was like, let me just grow my beard and have this, and they kept wanting to put longer attachments to it, and he's like, it looked weird in the first one. Let me just have this beard, my beard, and they did that, and it looked so much better. I don't know. This shouldn't have been 3 films at all, and that wasn't Peter Jackson's decision. That was Warner Brothers wanting to split into 3 films. Like, you should have had Smaug's, like, I don't know. The climax of the first one shouldn't have been like that scene with the trees and the fire and all that. Like, Thorin's whole thing of hugging Bilbo and being like, I was so wrong about you, shouldn't have been at the end of the first film. That resolves their conflict way too early just because he decided to tackle an orc that was about to shoot him, about to kill him. Like, it's not a big thing. Like, that should have happened after the barrel sequence or sometime, during the whole Smaug thing as well. Like,
he also doubles back on that. He kind of, in the second and third one, he still doesn't really trust Bilbo fully again. And it's like,
exactly.
He resolves his conflict, then he's like, nah, I'll forget all about my progress.
And then Bilbo betrays him in the third film.
Well, he should. Thorin was being a dick.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was wrong, but
Thorin's a dick from day dot.
Yeah, he is.
That's the thing. He's not a likable character.
No.
Like,
yet he has nothing redeeming in these films. Like, it's literally just that he's supposed to be the king, and everyone says that he's great. He's like, no, he's the true leader. And I'm like, but obviously with Aragorn, you see just like this great character all the time, fighting for people selflessly. And Thorin's just like, no, screw you guys. I want my mountain and my gold. And everyone's like, what a great dude.
Contrasting Aragorn and Thorin is like really weird because Aragorn's like this reluctant king, whereas Thorin's like, no, I should be king. I want my money. Like, he's chucking a little tantrum. Like, it's so.
And that's the thing. No one in Lord of the Rings says Aragorn's so great. Like, I watched Aragorn in a battle, and he is awesome. But they say it over and over again for Thorin, and it doesn't come true. Like, you're just like, Thorin's a dick. No. Like, I don't know. I don't like Thorin. I like Richard Armitage. Great actor.
Yeah, Armitage is great.
But
I'd probably stick with voice work.
Yeah, but Thorin's not great. So, no. And that's a big problem.
I just really think Peter Jackson, he could have just been like, I don't want to do this. It's just weird to me to be like, he wants to save. He's like, no, I can't let this fall into the hands of another country or another director. So I'll make a really shitty product.
But
it's also, man?
It's also his baby in a way. Like, Lord of the Rings is his, and this is a prequel to that. But then you wouldn't want another director doing that.
No, I would. I would be like, someone do your interpretation, especially if he said, I don't want to do another Middle Earth thing. Like, why does he then do another Middle Earth thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very confusing. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, money was probably just a little factor in it.
They brought him a life-size statue of gold carved in his own image, and he's like, "Yes."
It didn't melt really badly animatedly. Like
there was no
the
CG
gold
melting.
looks so bad, and the fact that all the dwarves are heat resistant make that seem so bother. Like Thorin jumps on this little plate that's riding down this molten gold river, like on a metal plate that would absorb that heat and kill him, and it doesn't do anything. The dragons breathing fire, they hide behind these little columns and they're just like, we're good, we're fine. Yeah. It's like they're indestructible. And it's the same thing with the barrel scene, with Bomber just bouncing around.
Oh, that barrel scene is so bad.
That scene has a GoPro in it for like 3 different shots.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's insulting, man.
Yeah.
And that's another argument for why Peter Jackson's not that great of a director, because I remember him being like, this is fun, let's do a GoPro thing here, this will be great in the film. And it's so obvious when you're watching it, you're like, oh, what are we watching? Like a fail video or something? Like I don't.
You convinced me. Peter Jackson sucks.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I agree. I watched a fan edit of these movies, or some of it, and one of the scenes they like highlight is their scene down the river, and they were showing they still use those GoPro scenes. I actually didn't realize they were in the movie. I just thought that's what that fan edit did. So they're shocking. They're so bad.
Oh man! And there's so many little shots in that of like. There's one in particular that has bothered me from the moment I saw it in the cinema, of like Dwalin catching an axe and like turning around to face the camera, and it looks so CGI and so bad, and it's just that's a whole mess, that barrel scene.
Yeah. Who deserved better? I mean, I've already said mine. I believe. I mean, I'm a big fan of Lee Pace. I think he's underrated, and I think he was good in these movies. Like I think whatever his name is, Thranduil, whatever his name is, like he does that character well. That character has some shitty lines, particularly at the end, but he does have a presence about him in these movies, and I enjoy that. And Bard, like I said, like he's the best fleshed out character in these, like that was fleshed out from the books. So Luke Evans.
Yeah, I've always got more time for Luke Evans. I think he's tops. I don't know, just Tolkien's dead body and legacy probably deserves better.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, Ian McKellen deserved better. Like,
good answer. Yeah,
he's great in these films. Like, he's still great in these films, but
he feels really tired in this, though.
He does,
and he is, because he's an old man.
Yeah,
and like that's the thing. Like what Grant was saying earlier, there's that scene. Like he broke down in tears filming the first scene of them in Bilbo's house with all the dwarves, and he's walking around this green screen looking at green dots and talking to them, and he just was like, what am I doing? He was like crying. He's like, I haven't even met these people that I haven't met the actors playing these people yet. What am I doing here, Peter?
And Peter Jackson's there rubbing his nipples with gold, just go and act for me, Ian.
So he did watch the behind the scenes stuff. Ian McKellen and Christopher Lee, because he's a legend, and like I will say, as not great as it is, I really like the fight scene in Battle of Five Armies with Saruman and Elrond fighting those Nazgul ghosts. I like the way it looks, though. I like how they're shattering and like this armor's just going in and they're reforming, and just like seeing Saruman fight, even though it's just someone that's 20 years old wearing like hair and makeup and stuff like that. But the way they're moving with the staves and like the weapons, and seeing Elrond fight and everything like that, I thought it looked cool, like aesthetically cool, way cooler than any of the stuff in the actual Battle of Five Armies.
Yeah, that is true, actually.
It is. It's nice to find, like, even in Lord of the Rings, it's kind of weird that there's these really, really powerful creatures that don't do anything. Like Galadriel turns up for like 15 minutes in Fellowship of the Ring and like doesn't really do anything. Like Elrond's just aloof. Saruman obviously does some stuff, but yeah, it is kind of nice to see them kicking some ass, I guess. Yeah,
man, yeah. Galadriel obliterates that dude. She's like, "Don't mess with me," and he's like, "What?" And starts and she just waves her hand, and he blows up into smithereens. And it's like, holy shit!
That was the best bit. It's like, okay, I see why they're afraid of her now. She can just explode people at will.
Yep.
And then like, she never used that power again.
No, because she did it to Sauron, and Sauron's like, "We'll take her to Lothlorien. She's given up on life now. She's lost all her life energy." And I will say, I don't like this whole love thing that they try and do with Gandalf and Galadriel.
It's so weird.
What is with that?
She's married. Like her husband's at home, like in the forest, and she's like, there's this weird flirty thing with Gandalf, and like he's come with me, my lady, and like it's weird.
Like if you type like did Galadriel into Google, like the first result is like did Galadriel and Gandalf have a relationship and all this stuff. Like it's weird. It's misplaced. Like
it's only in these films. There's no source material for that.
No, that's right.
I mean, that's my erotic fanfic right there. So it's not
Ian McKellen. Good on you.
I reckon he's jacked underneath that robe though. He's like Iroh from Avatar. He's absolutely sculpted.
Oh, he would be. He's like 7 foot tall, man. He's a beast.
All right. Does anyone have a quick fix for these movies?
Oh yeah.
Make it one movie.
That's simple. That's the first sentence. No, so all right. There's two ways to do it. Firstly, it's one way is to just completely remove the childlike sense of wonder and story, basically, or just any of the original story material, and just make another Lord of the Rings trilogy. Very loosely adapt it, like almost completely rewrite it and be like, it's the Hobbit, but it's not really. Or the better answer is make this literally make this a Disney animated film. Make this Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Make it fun. Make it lighthearted. Because that's what the first film feels like. And this is what I was mentioning. Like, you have these 13 or 18 or 26 dwarves. I don't know. I don't really care. You have all these characters in there, and they don't have anything to do. And even if that's fine if they're all sort of caricatures or like if they've got something funny about them. And so what they should do is like make it anything where one character is sleepy, one's dopey, one's hot-headed, one's charming. I don't know. You've got Dr. Exposition there, and you've got the dopey one with the slingshot, and you've got the really fat one with the things. All right, do something like that for all of them. Like, give them all this dumb gimmick where they can just be comic relief and make this a light-hearted animated film or something. That works.
Yeah.
That's what the book is. The book's a light-hearted. It's fun. It's an adventure. It's a kid's story. Why is this a film that's marketed for the Lord of the Rings audience?
Exactly, and it's because that they pushed this thing to make it a prequel for Lord of the Rings when it's not, and that's the whole problem, because the central conflict of these movies isn't the same as the central conflict in Lord of the Rings. Like, the central conflict of these films is meant to be the dwarves getting back to Erebor and reclaiming his throne. Like, nothing to do with Sauron or anything like that, or the ring. But, yeah, no, because they push that whole agenda, it ruins it. And that's the thing, like, there is stuff like that with the dwarves in the first one where you could tell they were going in that more childlike direction with the songs. Bomber's the one who eats, like Ori's the young one, like you said, the one with the slingshot and everything like that. They have these things about them, but then it never goes any further than that. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, Balin's the one in Fellowship. That's like the tomb where Gimli goes to visit them in the Mines of Moria. That's Balin. That's the you call Dr. Exposition.
Oh, that's his place.
If you know a bit of it, like Ori, the young one with the slingshot, he's the one that is there writing the book that they say, like, oh, they are coming. Like, he's the skeleton on the floor holding the book that Gandalf picks up.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah. Couldn't you tell? His trusty slingshot was next to him. But
this will defend against dudes with swords.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, the way to fix these films is for them to not be here, like the way that they are. Like, I think if you did an edit of these in these three films, you could make a decent two films. Cut out a lot of the extra crap. Like, I don't know why there needed to be an extended scene in the first one of just the dwarves fighting naked at Rivendell in the pool. Like,
that's right. Yeah, they're like having a pool fight.
That's in the extended. Like,
it's them defiling the elven waters.
And it's just
classic.
It's
Brett McKenzie's in that scene too.
Yeah, he gets a lot more to work with.
He does.
But I don't know. I think I've gone over how to fix this earlier in our discussion, but
yeah, I think we have. The other thing I was going to add, which I already talked about anyway, was just the link to Lord of the Rings should be the allure of the ring, and you get that, like, have that a couple of times in there. That's it. That's all it needs. Like, we've seen Gollum, we've seen Sting, we've seen the mithril armor, and we've seen the allure of the ring. That's all it needs to set up.
Yeah, and don't have it like they do it too much, because, like, what, Bilbo has this ring for like a month. And he's already really, like, keeps looking at it and like, and then 60 years later, he's still not, like, super obsessed with it. Like, obviously he's a little in Lord of the Rings, but he seems like already at that point after a month in this. Well, Frodo's not like that straight away either,
No.
but because they've got to push it straight away. So
It's real. They don't have any time to work with.
yeah.
We haven't talked about it. What did you guys think of? I guess maybe we'll talk about it in the winner. But what do you guys think of Benedict Cumberbatch? What did you think of Smaug?
The highlight of that movie. Like,
The
I think
movie?
I think Desolation of Smaug, like the scene with Smaug is the Riddles of the Dark of the second movie. Like it's that scene at the end that really saves it. Even though I think Desolation of Smaug is the best of the trilogy. I think it's the most entertaining and easiest to watch. And I really do like I'm a big Benedict Cumberbatch fan, and I think him as Smaug is awesome. I think it goes on a little too long, the dialogue between him and Bilbo, but it's really interesting. And then Bilbo trying to, compliment him heaps like he does in the book, like to warn his ego or whatever.
Smaug, yeah.
And you can see Smaug digs it a bit. But I don't know, there's some cool stuff with Smaug, and I really like him, and he doesn't really feel threatening because the dwarves seem indestructible. Like he should kill one or two of them.
Yeah, he should eat one or two of them. They're not doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
No. That's the problem. Like they should have killed half the dwarves and just been like, we can now focus on 4 or 5 of them instead of just not having anything to do.
Man, the fact that 12 dwarves running out in the Battle of Five Armies is what changes the tide of the battle. It's like there's this massive army wiped out, and then 12 dwarves walk out, and they're like, "Here we go!"
One of them has a slingshot. That's all he's got to do.
Well, we actually, okay, we'll talk about Desolation of Smaug because it's the only one we haven't really tapped into other than the barrel scene.
Well, I mean, that's your winning movie, Luke. Desolation of Smaug.
For me, and it has been that since I watched the trilogy. That's always been the one that I was like, that was fine. Not great, but I enjoy that one more than the other two, definitely.
I think I agree. I find it really, I found it really, really hard to pick a favorite of these movies. Like I really just didn't really enjoy them very much. But the thing is, number 2 has lots of scenes that I really hate. Like it is the movie that has the barrel scene, which I think is just really, really bad. Like it is in the books, but it's just so silly and bombastic here. Like it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
I think there's just some really weird stuff with the elves in this movie too. Like I don't know, the way they take out the spiders and are flipping around, and like it's funny to look at people memeing on that scene in Lord of the Rings where Legolas slides down the stairs on the shield. Like people are like, "Oh, that seems so stupid and unrealistic," and then you look at him in this movie, and it's just like he's leaping over rooftops all through Lake Town and stuff. Like they just take that to the nth degree, and it's terrible.
Like, I wish he would do something as boring as slide down the steps on a shield in these movies. Like, it's the most subtle thing in these. But that's the thing, there's the scene with the spiders and the weird forest where they're all walking around getting tripped out.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Did you guys enjoy that? It goes too long as well, I feel like.
It does, but I like that. So I think, again, one of the thing that makes Desolation of Smaug good, not good, but better, and I think it's the best film out of the 3, is it has a lot more of a horror vibe. Like it feels more tense. Things about it feel real because you've sort of got that presence of Smaug throughout it that you know you're going to see him and that he's going to destroy this town. And that's kind of unsettling. And the forest, I think, is really good. Everything in these films goes for too long.
Yeah.
So it's like that just goes without saying. But I think that's good because there's some creepy stuff and it does feel uneasy the whole time. And of course, when the dwarves start like just all crossing the river, it just completely disarms that. It's like, oh, they're being stupid again. But leading up to that, where it's like they're getting lost, they're having hallucinations, Bilbo's seeing himself walk, like it's cool. Like, it's like a weird, trippy, like fever dream.
It's also it's the film that Gandalf seems to be away from the group the most, so it does allow them to actually, it allows Bilbo to save the group, like get them out of the elven like keep and stuff. Like I think that's some of the better scenes. Like I don't mind like him using the ring to help them escape.
That's the thing. I like everything in Mirkwood, and until it gets to the barrel scene, like I do like the stuff leading up to that.
Yep.
The introduction of Thranduil and everything like that. I like the scene with the spiders. I think it's creepy how when he puts the ring on, he can hear the spiders talking.
Yeah,
and it adds much more like dimension to it. Like, oh god, this is creepy, and they're all just going around like eat the fat one. It's like it's creepy, it's unsettling, and just have the whole thing with the necromancer where it's not weird. One thing I'll go into, because obviously it's been probably a long time since you've watched the theatrical one. So Thrain, Thorin's dad, that's with the necromancer place, he's not in it at all in the theatrical.
Oh, really?
Yeah. because you know how the movie starts and Gandalf's talking about the missing ring, like missing dwarven ring.
Yep.
That's not, he doesn't mention it in the theatrical, and so then he never finds Thrain either. Like there's just no mention of Thrain. So he goes there, runs into the necromancer. So there's a lot of stuff I feel like they add into Desolation of Smaug as opposed to just extra battle scenes and stuff like that. There's these weird things where you feel like that should be a part of the plot in a way. But yeah, and Bjorn's in it. Do you guys like Bjorn?
You see the dumb werewolf thing?
The bear.
The shapeshifter.
Yeah, no, not really.
No, I didn't particularly either.
I don't know. They build up this whole thing that he hates dwarves, and then he's pretty welcoming and
Yeah,
like gives him his ponies and like
the whole scene where like Gandalf's scared of him, but he's trying to introduce the group, and they all just stumble out of his house one at a time, and it goes for way, way too long.
it goes way too
Bad.
long. Like 2 at a time for 12 of them, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh god. But yeah, no, like Desolation of Smaug, I think is the strongest. Benedict Cumberbatch is great. It's got the introduction to Bard. I really like what they do with Bard in number 2, and the introduction of Lake Town, even though I don't like a bunch of stuff in Lake Town, but I think Lake Town's a cool, different location. And yeah, no, I enjoy a lot of the stuff in Desolation of Smaug more than the other 2 movies.
Enjoy is a strong word.
Yeah. Smaug's great. I do enjoy Smaug. But
I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes with Desolation. In Battle of Five Armies, I was just like on my phone the whole time. I've got nothing to watch here.
Yeah.
But this one was had my attention a bit. I think, Lake Town's really interesting. I like I just love that aesthetic of like towns built on water where it's like everyone's rowing through the streets. That's always really cool.
Yeah.
And it is kind of, again, it brings that sort of human element to this whole story, because until then, we don't really have like what the rest of the world is going through. It's just been the dwarves and now some elves, but this kind of brings in the human cost of what Smaug has done and like the world outside of the dwarves. Yep. It's interesting to be like, they're still here, stuff's still going on, and Smaug's got like, by freeing Smaug or by releasing Smaug and getting the mountain back, this town of people dies. And so,
they wipe that town out. Like they destroy it. It's
like there is consequences to their actions, and I think that adds a lot of depth to the story that I don't know if it's in the books, but I think it just enhances it.
It is. It makes it gives the quest some stakes, I guess. Like there's the quest otherwise is really dull, I think. But giving a cost to them getting the mountain, and then also I think one of the more interesting parts of the third film is the humans moving into, is it Dale or whatever it's called, like the old town that they lived in before Lake Town.
And that's the thing. I don't know who watches the third one and is on Thorin's side at all. Because like because of him, that town gets destroyed. When Bard said that would happen, then Bard comes there for the payment that Thorin promised him on his word, and he's just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, and there's that weird scene where they're talking through like the door hole, like, and Thorin
slides
in.
When he approaches the wall, I couldn't remember what happens, and I'm like, why? He's walking up to a solid wall, and they're talking through this little hole. It's so stupid.
Just the way he slides in and slides out.
Oh, it's like this. He's in a literal mountain of money. He can't afford to pay someone who just killed a dragon for him. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. No. I don't know.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I don't know. They could have really explored the mountain of money and the greed and how it relates to modern day billionaires. But anyway,
and you can tell they're really like they had, because obviously, like I said, Luke, this whole film feels just tacked on. It doesn't need to be here at all. And so I think they're really trying to be like, what can we do here besides the battle? Like, what can we anchor this with? And like, oh, greed. Thorin's greedy. Full stop. Yeah. It's like so. Because, I think there could have been a really interesting story there, and, exploring the parallels of the dragon and why creatures are attracted to gold and the greed and, what it does, blah, blah, blah. But they're really just like, for some reason, he just goes mad and he's like, no one ever touched my gold. You're all traitors. And it's like, this all happened very fast and very pointlessly.
Yeah. I mean, it is accurate to what happens in the book, but it's just an unnecessary film. It should have been one film or 2 shorter films. 3
or
films.
A 10-minute scene of just like, and then Thorin got corrupt and died.
Went back to his home planet.
Gandalf says in the third one, like it is, it is this thing about gold and dragon sickness is like an actual thing where if a dragon's been sitting on this gold for a long time, like it seeps into people, but it doesn't seep into any of the other dwarves.
It's just like or something.
Yeah, but it just affects Thorin. Like it just turns him into a dick, and everyone else is like, "What the hell, man?" Like it's weird, and like you'd think he's been there for an hour. Like, he's been in this castle for an hour, and already he's completely goes back on his word. He's like, no, I'm not giving you anything. We will fight to the death over this, like 12 of us against the whole elven army that's out there right now.
And it takes so long for any of the dwarves to do anything about that. They're all just like, oh, this sucks, we're going to die. But we'll just do it because he's the king, I guess. Like,
yeah.
And it's like, finally at the end, one of them's like, no, we won't do it. Like, where were you an hour ago, man?
Yep.
But they don't even do anything until Thorin already comes to his senses. Thorin comes to his senses and is walking to them and like, wait a minute, man, I've had enough of this. Like, they're all dead out there. Like, all my family's dead out there. We should go join them. And he's like, you're right. Let's go. That's the first time there's any confrontation other than Balin just being like, this isn't good, laddie. You know, like, but I don't know. Yeah. And then even Gandalf and the whole thing with Thranduil wanting those jewels is they stole the jewels off him 60 years ago. So his whole thing where he seems like a bad guy, he literally wants the stuff that the dwarves stole off him 60 years ago. And it's, the dwarves are assholes in this.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that when the dwarven army then comes to fight the elvish army, and even the other dwarves that aren't Thorin that are with him are all just like, yeah, here we go. Like, it turns them into dicks as well, in a way. Like, it's like...
I thought the whole point was like that this war goes back so far no one remembers who's bad, because the dwarves are like, you turned on us when we needed you. The elves are like, no, you turned on us when we needed you. So I thought the whole point was like everybody's just kind of greedy and no one remembers why they hate each other.
Yeah. But it doesn't. There's no good payoff on it. Like, they just all team up to defeat the orcs, and that's kind of it. Everybody goes their own way. There's no.
Are there 5 armies?
Yeah.
3 of them are orc armies from different locations. So.
No, I thought it was like humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, and birds, like the eagles and.
The eagles.
No, the eagles aren't one of the armies. Like, they consider.
They don't actually count as one of the armies.
It's like humans, dwarves, elves, the Gundabad orcs, and then the orcs from Dol Guldur. Like, is considered the ones with the worms. They're the 5th. Like, that's a separate thing. And then
I assumed it was like dwarves, Thorin's dwarves, elves, orcs, humans.
And Thorin, like, it's that whole Viper, the mountain sort of thing with Azog going under the water for ages, and then he just like he's watching him float back on the surface.
That's
it's like, what are you doing?
How does he leap out from the ice?
Oh, I had that thought. I was like, where did he jump off from to be underwater and just like whoo,
for that long,
launch out of the water like a dolphin? Like, Azog just whips his legs and shoots out, breaks through the ice as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems with Azog, the Defiler.
It's
defiled these movies.
Pretty much.
It's such a bad trope where like the bad guy's down for the count and the hero doesn't finish him. Like, you could stab through that ice into his face and end him. Yeah. Like, it's so frustrating, and it's used a lot.
Or just like walk away and be like, cool, he's dead now. And he's not going to, he can't stay under the water forever.
I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of problems with that movie.
Did anybody not learn from like the technology in this battle too? Like the dwarves using those propeller things to reflect all the arrows. Like, Helm's Deep, that would have saved so many lives.
Even
anyway,
all the trolls and like that with the armor and the catapults on their back, they don't have them in Lord of the Rings in the battle 100 years from now. They don't have that on the Siege of Minas Tirith or anything like that. But I do like the one funny part in Battle of Five Armies is the troll that has the armor on its head that just runs up and dives headfirst into a wall and knocks itself out just to break the wall.
No, so I didn't like that scene though, because it's like they're finally adding some stakes, right? The women and children are getting attacked in this city that they've gone back to, and then to kick it all off, they show this troll getting knocked out. Like, it's like, they're finally adding some stakes. It's finally getting serious. There's finally going to be some conflict. And it's the dude knocking himself out, and it's real stupid. And
that's the thing. That's the problem. Like, the orcs just seem to get wiped, easily killed though. Like, they're attacking these humans that aren't soldiers, and the soldiers are just sort of wiping them out for a lot. Like, you don't see humans getting destroyed by these orcs. Like, and it's the whole thing. I know it happens in Lord of the Rings as well, but Bilbo just throwing rocks and killing these orcs by smacking their head, and then just going, ooh.
Look, these Dungle Bungle orcs aren't as good as the Sauron orcs.
No, true. It was the Gundabad ones that got knocked out.
High, that's right.
And why do the orcs speak another language in this? And not in Lord of the Rings, they speak English.
No, they do speak another language in Lord of the Rings as well. Just
Yeah,
not all the time.
they do, but
When?
then there's some of the ones that talk English as well that are like, "Where's the meat?"
I don't think there's. When is there ever a scene where the orcs speak in the original ones? The Uruk-hai do. They speak like Uruk-hai-esque.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But I feel like they're different to the normal orcs, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, normal orcs, like, they're doing their squeals and they're, I don't know, none of them really talk.
I know. I feel it's just weird, but even I think that's part of the point, right? They're kind of like they're meant to be like these dumb, like almost like a zombie horde that's starting to learn language. Whereas in this, they're all very like eloquent speakers, and they all spend a lot of time like,
articulate.
just
like,
chatting
Mr.
about
Azog, I saw Thorin over the hill.
God, well, Azog comes along, he's like, we will bathe in the blood, hunt them all down. I'm like, that's very elegant.
Oh man, Azog.
Good character.
I'm so glad we started talking about the best of these films and got back onto Battle of the Five Armies and just shitting on it for the last 10 minutes. Anyway, does anyone have anything else they want to add to our podcast on The Hobbit?
Who would Dennis Franz be in out of the dwarves?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I forgot about that.
Because he could be any of the dwarves.
He should be all of the dwarves. There's so much CGI already.
You wouldn't notice. I don't know. Have him be Dane Ironfoot, not as a CG.
Yeah, instead
Billy
of Billy Connolly, I'm actually in favour of that.
I don't know. But
I would rather Dennis Franz be old man exposition and just have him have him
great.
I want him just being like, here's X, Y, and Z. That'd be fun.
But yeah, I don't know. It's much more fascinating watching the behind the scenes stuff on these. I would encourage people to watch it. It gives a lot of look into what's going on. And there's a 3-part documentary on YouTube by a YouTube subscriber, Lindsay Ellis. They have a lot of views, like 2-3 million views. Yeah, they're really interesting. They're only half hour long, 3 of them, and it goes into all of the stuff about what went wrong with it, with interviews of some of the dwarves and like the whole thing. I'll just say quickly, one of the dwarf she interviewed, he went into like that none of the New Zealand actors, like none of the dwarves, got invited to the red carpet premiere, but like Legolas, Frodo got invited to the Battle of Five Armies premiere. Like Frodo's not even in Battle of Five Armies, and like they all got invited, but none of the New Zealand actors did. And there was just like this weird thing that there was a weird conflict going on, and none of the actors were happy by the end of the 3rd film. But it's some interesting stuff I found out. So
I can't commit any more of my time to these movies, even in a formal documentary.
Go back and watch Lord of the Rings.
Peter Jackson personally owes me 9 hours.
All right. That's it. It's done. We never have to watch them again. We're free from the curse of the ring. Next week, I think it's my turn.
Yes.
Yep.
I've been tossing up between a few movies, but I think I'm just going to pick something nice and short, easy watching, something I really enjoyed when I was a kid and probably doesn't hold up at all, but I want to do The Mighty Ducks.
Oh, far.
Oh.
They're really short, Conan.
When are we going to watch good movies again?
You can pick the good movies.
1 out of 3, okay. Mighty Ducks, all right. Emilio Estevez.
Do you not like Mighty Ducks?
I've never seen them, and I
Oh man, you're in for a treat.
No, because I'm a 27-year-old man.
Yeah, I don't know if they hold up.
I'm not a 14. If I was a 14-year-old boy, sure, I'm sure they'd be great.
I have not watched Mighty Ducks since I was maybe 8 or 9, but I loved the hell out of them back then.
Same.
So I'm keen to watch them again. Goldberg. Hell yeah.
The Bash Brothers. Let's do this.
Oh man, I love the Bash Brothers.
Jeez.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. Find us on socials at Good, Bad, Worst, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a rating. Tell your friends and family about us, and we'll catch you next time.
Can't think of anything witty to say. These movies killed me.
Screw you, Peter Jackson.
Curse it.